Let's turn to the letter that you wrote to your delegation. You called President Trump dangerous. You added, quote, his sick mind and reckless conduct could consume the lives of millions. We should note, Senator, you're not a psychiatrist. You're not a psychologist. You have no medical standing to diagnose anyone. Are you concerned at all that by attacking the president's mental fitness, you might undermine criticisms you have of his policies and his actions?
Jake, very few members of Congress are psychiatrists or physicians, and very few, even fewer members of the cabinet. And yet the Constitution empowers them to find a president unfit to carry out the duties and powers by virtue of physical or mental impairment. So setting up a standard that one must be a psychiatrist to come to some judgment about this mountain of empirical evidence that the president has a sick psyche is to set up a false standard. We as Americans are stewards of our children's, our families' safety and future, and we must, in my view, now come to some conclusions about the president's fitness.
Well, where do you get this from? Obviously, he sends a lot of tweets. Obviously, he's made a lot of comments that have offended people. But going from there to he has a sick psyche and should be removed from office, yes, that's quite a leap.
Well, indeed it is, and let me give you a vivid example of the president's delusional thinking. The other night, as part of this nuclear crisis, he said that he has modernized America's nuclear forces. That simply is not true. It's patently false. No president can do that in 7 months. Furthermore, it takes appropriations by Congress to make physical changes in the nuclear arsenal, and those appropriations have not yet been forthcoming. So the president told an untruth. And what's really shocking is that he has no guilt or shame or apparently even awareness that he's engaging in lies, and he believes his own stories. This is delusional conduct.
Well, we have heard a lot of lies from a lot of...
He's not a well man.
We have heard a lot of lies from a lot of politicians. I will grant you that you hear more of them from this president than previous presidents in terms of the sheer number. But it's not as though lying, no offense to you as a former senator, it's not as though your virgin ears have never heard lies before. Yeah.
It's more than that. He's delusional. He doesn't grasp the fact that he's lying. He believes in his own lies. He cannot be persuaded otherwise, and he has no shame or guilt or regret or remorse. I mean, the man is delusional as well as paranoid, an extreme narcissist, as I think we would all agree at this point. He's not well. He really should be. Congress and the cabinet should be thinking in serious terms about whether he's fit to serve.
Have you talked to any members of the cabinet? Have you talked to any of your former colleagues in the U.S. Senate about this issue?
I have, yes.
Any Republicans?
Not a great many. I live in New Hampshire. I'm not a denizen of Washington. I left there a long time ago. But I'm finding that behind the scenes, they're saying the man is crazy. In front of the scenes, they're not quite ready to do that. And that's why it's so important that we talk about the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, which authorizes the cabinet or the Congress, in the alternative, to appoint a body that either finds the president fit or unfit from a physical and or mental point of view to exercise his powers. Most Americans don't know that, are not aware of that amendment. It's been part of the Constitution now for 50 years, but that part of it, Article 4 of the 25th Amendment, has never been used before, so people aren't aware of it. And if Congress and the cabinet are ever to get to the point where they feel comfortable in exercising their constitutional powers, then public opinion and awareness must be prepared.